So this particular question for parents was asking them what the greatest challenge was for them during the remote learning period, so March to June. And this is a summary of the results. So, you know, one of the pieces that was at the top was a lot of parents struggled with just getting their children to do the work. So that's really an acknowledgement. As a parent, I can certainly understand that parents quickly became teachers, and it's in a regular time, it's probably difficult to get children to do work, but to get them to do a lot more work at home, we certainly recognize as a challenge. So we're trying to put some supports in place for that. Mr. Becerra already spoke a little bit about scheduling. That was resoundingly needed in our plan. So students, staff members, and parents and guardians all shared that when there wasn't a very consistent schedule that came with some specific and consistent expectations, it made learning difficult for kids and for families. So one of the hallmarks, I think, of our plan is that we will be following a consistent schedule, both at the K-6 and 7-12 levels. And we'll talk more about that shortly, but that has definitely been addressed. Another acknowledgement is just parents reconciling their own work schedule with their children's learning schedule. So, you know, I work from 8 to 5, and then I'm coming home and working with my children or child trying to get through this schoolwork. So again, that's another acknowledgement in a place where we're trying to be, you know, as understanding as possible. Parents kind of understanding how work was being distributed in order to sometimes hold their children accountable. So we had a lot of parents say, you know, I'm definitely going to make sure that my son or daughter gets done what they need to, but I need to know what that is in order to do that. And so again, this is another place where communication, we're going to make more consistent and routine in order to make sure that parents have that information. And then the last piece was just varying expectations. So we had some parents who said, you know, I have children in 2 or 3 different school buildings, and sometimes the expectations were different at those levels, which is going to happen sometimes, but we are trying to make those expectations more consistent and clear for parents. So again, hopefully you'll hear through some of the information that's going to be shared how we're addressing some of those things, but we're also certainly acknowledging all those things as challenges for parents. So thank you for that feedback. I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Becerra. He's going to share some information, some specific things about how learning is going to look a little bit different this year when compared to March to June this past year.
Yeah, very quickly, because we've already touched on some of these items, but having a specific schedule is very important, and students will be, and staff will be following those specific schedules on a daily basis. Attendance on a daily basis will be taken. So even if a student is fully remote, or on the days that they're remote under the hybrid schedule, they're still being expected to engage. And obviously that looks different at different levels. If you have specific questions about what that looks like, you can certainly talk to our building principals. But bottom line is students are expected to be present and accounted for whatever version of instruction your family chose. One of the questions that we had was, are we returning to a standard grading practice? The grading looked different at the end of last year. We feel that we've been able to prepare sufficiently so that we can return to what is a more typical standard grading practice. So students will be getting regular grades as they were earlier in last year. We will be returning to that, that type of format. Virtual code of conduct is something we've been talking about quite a bit. As we know that we have to get more and more comfortable with learning remotely, and learning is going to look different. It means that we still need to put some standards in place, because we have to ensure that there's a, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's at home, students need structure and they need an environment that's conducive to learning. So our staff is, our administrators and some of our teachers are working on creating a document that thoroughly explains what the expectations are for the learning environment. This is all being finalized, worked on and finalized at this point, and that's going to be distributed before school starts to all of our families and our students in particular. And finally, streaming is going to be an essential part of our instructional program. We understand that teachers and students need to be able to have that real-time interaction. It's an essential part of the process. And so streaming is going to be a key component of that. That is why we feel strongly that we do need to add, again, some guardrails, as we've talked about, and that will come in the form of the virtual code of conduct, so that everybody understands from the beginning what the expectations are for everybody involved, families, teachers, administrators, and so on. So we're going to ask Mr. Faustino to take us through some of the highlights of our K-6 instructional program. So Mr. Faustino, do you want to pick it up?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Becerra. Thank you, Mr. Clancy. So for those who are on the call, it was important for us to give you just a snapshot and some highlights of the K through 6 instructional model. And we have thought very thoughtfully about these to make sure that it was as close to normal as possible in a very abnormal year. So instruction will revolve around the core subjects of mathematics, ELA, and literacy, and then integrated writing. So we are not ignoring social studies and science. We are going to be integrating into that our writing curriculum, which it continues to be a priority for us. Our class sizes are going to be reduced by half for in-person instruction. We will continue to follow all the social distancing regulations and guidelines to ensure safety in and out of the classrooms and in our transitions in the hallways and during dismissal and arrival. Students will follow a very specific schedule, whether they are in person or remote. If they are in person, we're going to try to replicate a very normal school day. And if they are the opposite cohort or remote, they will also be following a very specific schedule that would include enrichment, specials, as well as core instruction in mathematics and literacy. 1 day of flexible instruction, which will be on Wednesday, which we at the elementary are calling our Raider group. That particular day is going to be devoted to our students who require some more academic support, as well as students who receive occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, and as well as those students who have struggled through this pandemic and that need some social emotional, some counseling, and those continuum services. So we feel this flex day is really built off of all the feedback that we received over the last several months. Our remote or at-home academic engagement when not in school is a priority. Even though students may not be in school, they will have and continue to have extended practice, homework, schoolwork, project-based learning. So those days would not be considered days off. They will be engaged and will be engaging with their teachers on those days. They are not in the building. There's a more option for increased in-person instructional days once we work through our numbers and our base schedule. The hope and the goal is to continue to add more programming before, during, and after school, as well as to have more people in person, but that will be a very layered approach so that we continue to follow our safety procedures. And then those students that are fully remote will have a fully remote teacher. There's a person who's assigned who will be a fully remote teacher who will continue to be the point person on that. So instead of being in class with that point person, they would have a full-time teacher that would be working with them 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And those students will continue to receive music, art, physical education, but it would be in a virtual model. So into our next slide here, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Altabello for our 7 through 12 highlights.
Thank you, Mr. Faustino. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As has been noted several times, it was really important for us to create a structured schedule that was consistent across the district and that created some kind of normalcy going into this very, awkward and strange new year. So we really looked at a couple different models, and we decided to stick with our 9-period-a-day schedule, and then splitting the class into half. We split them into 2 different cohorts, cohort 1 and cohort 2. Cohort 1 students will attend on Wednesday and Thursday, and then cohort 2 students will attend Thursday and Friday. And as Mr. Faustino had noted, that Wednesday is that flex day. And that flex day is really designed to provide additional supports to students who need it. Both regular education students, special education students, and really any student who needs a little additional assistance for mediation or smaller group instruction. One of the things about this new schedule is that we lost our 10th period, and our 10th period was designed very much for remediation type purposes. And so the way we've designed our Wednesday at the secondary level is very much like our 10th period, whereas a teacher can request a student to be there during that student's particular period, therefore still having that structure where kids can still follow their regular schedule on a Wednesday and also meet with their teacher. On the flip side of that, a student can say to a teacher, well, I need to meet with you because I need a little additional help. So I'm gonna jump in on my regularly scheduled period on a Wednesday, and I'm gonna get the extra help. And then the teacher will structure what that looks like within that particular room or period when providing additional instruction to those particular students. So we really feel like we have an increased support there that we weren't getting now that we didn't have 10th period because of transportation issues. So we do have created a schedule that allows us to go back and forth. If we have to go fully remote, we can certainly do that. If we can come back full bore, we can certainly do that. And if we have to stay within the hybrid model, obviously we can certainly do that. So we believe that we have a good plan. And we certainly understand that there's going to be some bumps and hills in the road, but we're going to kind of get through it together and make sure that we're working in the best interest of students and staff so that everybody can do their job. There's been a lot of questions revolving around BOCES. BOCES is going 2 days a week also. However, unlike our cohorts, their cohorts are going AA or 1-1 and then BB or 2-2, which creates a little bit of a transportation issue for us on Tuesdays and Thursdays. For example, if I'm a student and I'm in cohort 1, for us, I come to school in person on Monday and Thursday. But at BOCES, if I'm in cohort 1, I go to BOCES on Monday and Tuesday. So for our Monday BOCES students, it's not a problem. They're already in school. They go to BOCES like normal. On Tuesdays, however, because they're not in person, we have to arrange transportation for those BOCES students who are not in person here in Canastota. So we're in the middle of working that out, and we do believe that we'll have a good plan for that. In addition, what will help us is that some of our BOCES students will be driving to BOCES. However, BOCES has limited parking spots, so that's going to be a unique how BOCES decides to handle that, and which school gets how many spots, and so on and so forth. So all of that together will determine whether or not, or will determine how we structure our transportation schedule. So having said all of that, certainly please be patient, please be flexible, please have some understanding as we work through everything. There's still a lot of work to do, but we're working hard, making sure that school is safe and ready for students to return on September 10th. So having said that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Clancy.
Thanks, Mr. Altobello. So a couple items about special education, just to address some questions that have come in about that topic. So our special education services, which for Canastota primarily consist internally of integrated co-teaching and 15-1 special class, and our related services, so things like speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, counseling, those all will continue to be provided. So when our students are face-to-face in school, those services will be available and provided just like they would be in a typical school year, with all of the spacing and distancing requirements that we need to meet. Those services will be required, and then for our students who are remote, it would be a matter of providing access to those individuals, so to those special education teachers and to those speech providers. So in those cases, it would be similar to what had to occur in the spring with remote instruction. So providing access to those individuals for support and for teletherapy sessions. In addition, the accommodations and modifications that are typically provided through an IEP or a 504 accommodation plan would also continue to be provided when our students are face-to-face at school, and would need to be adjusted if a family has opted for fully remote instruction. But those still would exist, perhaps just a little differently depending on the setting. And I think this has been mentioned, but I'll kind of reiterate that in one of our surveys, we did ask families if we were able to provide additional days of instruction for some of our students with disabilities, would they be interested? And we got a lot of feedback with that. And we are in the process right now of going through those results, looking through specifically at student needs and availability, and then hopefully adding some of those days if families have requested them. So within the next week or so, you should be hearing from your school building in terms of whether or not those days would be able to be provided and how many of those days would be available. So thanks for that feedback. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Congdon, who's going to talk a little bit about athletics, clubs, and co-curriculars. Mr. Congdon.
Thank you, Mr. Clancy. Before I start, Mr. Altabello, it looked like you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Condon. It's important because I failed to mention one important piece for parents here. When those students in those cohorts, when they are not in school and they are in the remote portion of their educational program this year, it is really important that those students understand that they're going to be following their 9-period-a-day traditional schedule. I apologize, I failed to mention that, but that's really important because they're going to be at home following their schedule all day. So it's important that they understand that they need to take the breaks when they get them, during our 3-minute passing time. When they have a lunch, take a lunch, move away from the screen. When they have a study hall, if they choose certainly to do work, that's great. But if they really need that screen break time, to take that screen break time. So I just wanted to mention that because I realized I passed that up. And I thought it was an important thing for parents to hear. Thank you, Mr. Condon.
No problem. Stan Condon, Director of Athletics and 11th, 12th grade assistant principal. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. Just a couple updates with athletics. As many of you know, we were scheduled to start fall sports Monday, the 24th. That was postponed until September 21st. The governor really hasn't given us clearance yet to start, but they did postpone it. If we can't start on the 21st, there has been some talk about possibly starting the fall, winter, and spring sports starting in January. So there's some talk with that. Not too much really has happened in the world of athletics as far as updates until yesterday. Governor Cuomo did announce that he'll either let us know by the end of this week or beginning of next week whether we can move forward with fall sports. So stay tuned with that. We're looking forward to it. Please know the athletic directors and athletic leaders around the state, we recognize the importance of what high school athletics offers our students. We have approximately 560,000 actually high school athletes across the state, so we do recognize it's important, but the most important thing we have is safety for our student athletes also. So to be continued, and stay tuned. We hope to have some more clearance by next week. In regards to school clubs and extracurricular activities, we're going to revisit that again once school starts. We want to make sure we know who's in school, who's not in school. Some of the clubs that we had before, we may offer, but it may be in a remote setting. And possibility, if we feel we can offer some in-person clubs with numbers and safety, we may do so as well. But we're really not going to revisit our clubs until once school starts. In the meantime, all stakeholders, I know we're going through a lot of changes. We are, you are, let's work together. Let's stay positive. And as always, let's be Raider strong. And Mr. Panuccio, he's up with some updates on nutrition.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nick Panuccio, the Executive Director of Finance and Operations for the district. I just want to point out that our summer feeding program is going to end on August 31st. We will begin serving meals to free, reduced, and full-pay students once school starts. So meals are going to be served in small group settings. Students will be socially distanced when they eat. Meals will be available for pickup for remote-only students, so they can come down to one of our cafeterias and pick up meals. As I said, free, reduced, and full pay breakfast and lunch is going to be provided. Breakfast will be sent home. There's not going to be any breakfast eaten at the school to avoid more gatherings and to avoid some confusion. What's going to happen is, say your student is here on a Thursday, we will send them home with breakfast for the next few days before he is back in school. However, lunch will be eaten when students are in person. So if the students here at the school district, they will eat here as well in the cafeterias, socially distanced, and similar to breakfast, lunch will be taken home for them. They'll be right on their way out with the breakfast on the days that they are not here. So I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Transportation, Cindy Clark, for a summary on transportation.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Cindy Clark, Director of Transportation. We're in the process of working on all our current runs to accommodate the one-person seat we have 21 to a bus. If families are on the same bus, they're allowed to sit together and will be encouraged to sit together.
She came up on my People I May Know on Facebook, and she's been posting stuff.
In regards to our cleaning and stuff on the bus, all seats in high contact areas are going to be cleaned after each run. So for an example, after the high school run, everything will be wiped down and cleaned. Again, after the second run for the elementary. Every day, we're going to sanitize it with a BNC sprayer. It will immediately, upon contact, within 5 minutes, take care of any germs that may be sitting on the seats or touching the rails. Weekly, Fridays, or Wednesdays, we will be using a Clorox 360 machine that will go through the entire buses that immediately kills upon contact. Masks are to be worn by all children and adults that are on the bus, the driver, if there's an attendant, and all students. They will be separated. One will sit next to the door, or to the window, excuse me, and then one will sit next to the aisle in the seat behind them, and it'll be jagged throughout the bus. That's where we're allowed to get 21 to the bus. The routes are going to look a little different this year due to splitting with the cohorts. The times also may change. If anybody has any questions, feel free to give my office a call. You may not be on the same bus run as I may be combining some runs depending on how the cohorts look. We'll be working on them very hard this coming up week. We're also requesting at this point in time, if at all possible, one pickup and drop off to be at the same location in order to make the runs more efficient. For an example, if you have a child getting on at home on Monday and they're supposed to be going to school, but they're going to the babysitters in the afternoon with a different bus, it makes it a little bit more difficult to put the 21 or to have the 21 to the bus. We would like to see if parents would be able to bring that child to that sitters in the morning so that they would be on the same bus at all times. And that would be also for the tracing end of it. There's not going to be any after-school bus runs at this point. Once we get started, we can relook at that in the future. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to give my office a call, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Nick Panuccio to start with the safety protocols.
Thanks for that update, Cindy. For our safety protocols, there's going to be daily student and staff screening protocols for symptoms. This isn't going to happen once they arrive to school. This is going to start happening at the home and will continue all the way till they get to school. So when they get in the classroom, everything's good to go. As stated, masks will be worn by students and staff in accordance with the Department of Health and CDC guidelines when the social distancing is not possible. The nurses are seeking clarification on acceptable face coverings. I know there's been some rumblings in the news about certain face coverings, but we're going to rely on them to get back to us to see what is acceptable and what is not. And the refusal to wear a mask is going to be treated to either medical or disciplinary action. The maximum number of students in a classroom is dictated by the 6 or 12-foot standards. This spacing will not be reduced, as Superintendent stated earlier. We're not going to compromise by not working in accordance with social distancing. We're not going to cram kids in a classroom just to put more kids in there. And I'm going to right now pass the rest of the slide over to our Director of Facilities, Nick Campbell, who will talk a little bit more about the desks in the room and finish the slide.
Thank you, Mr. Panuccio. Hi, my name is Nick Campbell, Director of Facilities of Kansas Schools. And yes, we're working hard to meet the 6-foot standard social distance in our classrooms. We're measuring the desks side to side all the way around, so there is a clearance all the way around. We have sent signage outline safety requirements throughout our school facilities on hand washing, proper face wear, social distancing, and maintaining proper hygiene. Hand sanitizer stations throughout the facilities, office areas, when you come into the building, and encouraging of the hand washing. We have extra gloves and masks throughout the district and all buildings also. Proper hygiene training will be for all students and staff when they're on premise. I'd like to
I'll take it over, Nick, because I forgot to mention something. We actually put together a video for cleaning protocols. We're not going to show it today, but it is on our school website. So if you would like to go on there and take a look to see what we'll be doing throughout the course of the day in our cleaning protocols, please be free to go ahead and then give us a call if you have any questions. Sean or Chris, you want to hand it over?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So, so again, we tried to answer a lot of the most frequent questions we've been getting in the context of that presentation. We know that there's a lot there, but we thought it was important for you to hear from the different buildings, the different departments within the school operation. We understand that there's still going to be a lot of questions as we move forward. And as we noted, you know, we have some additional sessions, the first one being next Tuesday at 5 p.m. If people, you know, have additional questions that they'd like to ask. But I'd like to ask Mrs. Henner at this point if there are questions that people have posed through the chat, or if there are any questions that people would like to ask.
Yes, yes.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Mr. Bissetta. We do have a few parents who have volunteered and offered to ask their questions, and a couple of anonymous questions that we can ask, but I'd like to let the parents who requested to speak to go first. I'm asking Ryanbaum right now to unmute himself so that he may ask his question. I believe he might have 2 questions to ask. Go ahead, Ryan.
Trying to start video. Well, at least you can hear me. All right. Great job by the school. I just have one question and all the plans. Is there any plan to like de-densify the kids coming in the morning and leaving at the night? Are you having them, like, if they're arriving all at the same time and coming in the same entrance, you're kind of defeating the purpose. So are there going to be staggered arrival times, staggered dismissals, and is there multiple entrances? Because I don't know how you're going to do that with the security, because you usually have just one entrance for security, but now we've got all the students coming in. So what's the plan for that? That was my question.
Okay, and great question. Thanks for that, Ryan. And I don't know where we want to start, Nick or Cindy, if you want to talk about that. I guess one thing I would say, when students are actually entering the building and they're moving around the hallways, Nick Campbell and his team have done a lot of work with prepping the hallways to have the visual reminders stationed around the facilities to remind students and staff that they need to keep distancing. So when when we leave the bus or we leave the classroom, it doesn't mean that now we go back to normal. That still is something that's got to be at the forefront, and we need those visual reminders. So Nick, do you want to just talk a little bit about that? Because I know you and your team have been you know, putting that together.
Yes, so we have markings on the ground that indicate to stay the 6 foot distance. We have posters on walls to also maintain 6 foot distance. I believe when buses are releasing children, they're not just letting them all go at once. It's going to be a controlled environment as they leave and approach our building. Hopefully that answers your question.
And I'd like to add to that a little bit. We are talking about, and when kids get dropped off, they're going to go in one entrance, and busing when they get dropped off, or they're going to go in different entrances. We are going to use multiple entrances. And we also got to remember that we got about 20% of the kids that are going to be remote. So 40% will be going one day and 40% will be going the other. So that is a dramatic decrease from what we're used to getting. So we think we know we're going to be able to spread them out throughout the building to get them in here safely so they're not congregating all together. So Ryan, I don't know if you want to follow up or if that answers your question.
No, that answered the question. I was just seeing how you're doing it. That's all. At the beginning, at the end of the day, that was the hardest part, I think, for everybody in all the schools. So thank you.
Welcome.
The other thing I would add to that is we're going to keep a close eye on it because we want to see what that looks like. As Nick said, we know we're going to have far less kids, you know, in each day. So when we picture what it looks like for, you know, and kids entering the building, kids moving around in the hallways, that's not going to be what our new reality is with probably roughly 40% of our kids on any given day. But we are going to look to and see where do we need to make adjustments, because we know, you know, we think we have a good plan, but we always want to make it better. And so I think we're going to have a lot of eyes on that process to make sure that kids are getting constant reminders, and if we can find ways to make it even more understandable by everybody, then we'll do that.
Thank you, Ryan, for that. Our next question is coming from Robin, and she has a question about the remote scheduling. Go ahead, Robin.
Yes, when can we expect to know when our child's schedule will be on the remote day? I know this was touched on the earlier session. Is there a specific time frame that they will have to be logged on specifically for elementary kids?
Does one of our elementary principals want to speak to that question?
Sure, Robin. Oh, sorry, Rob. Jenny Carnahan, Peterborough Street Principal here, Robin. I will let you know that, yes, we are working on having specific login times, but we are certainly cognizant of the fact that that could be difficult for families, but that engagement and FaceTime and daily interaction is a priority. So our hybrid students, just like our remote students, will have a schedule to follow. Were you asking about hybrid or remote? Or both?
The hybrid, just on the days that they're going to be home on remote.
Cool.
Just trying to figure out work schedules, because I know a lot of parents work during the day, and that's putting a lot of pressure on daycare providers.
Yes, yes. So what we're working at, if I share an example with you, if your child is supposed to log on to a meet for some of that face-to-face and teaching and learning time at 10 o'clock, for example, we're anticipating being able to record that lesson so that you can watch it later with your child if 10 o'clock is a hardship for you. Ideally, we want them on and live at the time that they're supposed to be, but you would have the opportunity to watch it again later and to comment for attendance purposes. It could certainly be, even if they did attend, it can be watched later for follow through. Or that kind of thing. But at the lower elementaries, please know that we're keeping in mind screen time and, you know, what's developmentally appropriate, and looking at more of a blended learning model with more hands-on activities and follow through at home, in addition to that virtual piece, more, you know, authentic work and projects and, again, hands-on. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you. I was just concerned about if they have login times during the day with working parents and stuff, if the attendance would still be counted if we do it later in the evening when we're home.
Yeah, we're working on a plan, so exactly that is a possibility. Yes.
Do you have an approximate time frame when the parents will know so we can adjust our work schedules if needed? My daughter specifically is in 5th grade.
Okay, I will see if Mr. Faustino can answer that more specifically.
Sure, and it's a good question. We are leaning towards, and this is again a work in progress, but we're leaning towards the remote students, the ones that are in the hybrid model that are home on their opposite cohort day, is moving towards more of an afternoon schedule. And for their core subjects, and then providing enrichment and those special activities in the morning. So there's not as much pressure on the morning, but attendance would be taken in the afternoon, but we're looking for the hybrid model would be focused in the afternoon time from about that 12 o'clock on through the rest of the regular school day, which would end at 2:10. So we are looking for more of an afternoon model for that.
Okay, for working parents, so I mean, would we be able to, like she was saying, do it in the afternoon, like after work hours, and the attendance still be counted?
Well, that's something that we're going to continue to work through to make sure that we're monitoring that. In terms of the instruction, though, there's going to be lots of video links, and the platforms and curriculums that we're going to be utilizing this year and moving forward are easily transferable to more of a virtual world. So there will be videos that you can watch. The parents can know exactly what's going on. The attendance one is a difficult one to really nail down right now. We have to work through that because there's also expectations on us for that the attendance piece. But it is something that we're working through and we're discussing at length to make sure that we're supporting families.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Robin. Our next question comes from Maureen. So I'm going to ask Maureen to unmute her, and she can go ahead and ask her question about busing.
Yes, in thinking about the nightmare that would be trying to create those bus routes, I'm assuming that they would want parents to notify the bus garage if my kids who would normally be marked down for bus pickup, they're going to drive now. I think we probably want to get the word out there to parents so that the bus garage isn't planning for picking up those students who are now going to be dropped off or driving themselves to school.
That would be awesome, Maureen. We are going to start trying to reach out to a lot of parents to find out what their children's schedule are. And the ones that are older now, a lot of students do drive, which would make our job much more easier here. So if you already know that, if you could give my office a call, or you can send me an email also and let me know that, that would be great.
Okay, so I will definitely do that, but then my concern with that also would be, what if something happens with this older car that my daughter's now driving back and forth to work, and say for a week she doesn't have a car to get herself and her sister to school and then herself to BOCES. Will it just be a matter of a phone call or some other kind of contact with the bus garage to say, okay, she was a driver, but for this week we're going to need pickup?
Absolutely. Just call, or you can email me at any time. I mean, I'm always checking my email. So if the night before, you can email me. And when I get in first thing in the morning, I can make arrangements. If that particular bus is filled up with the 21 students, we'll make other arrangements to try to get your students to get them to school.
Okay, I'll just keep my fingers crossed that doesn't happen too, though, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. The last couple of questions we have are either anonymous or were submitted by folks that did not have a microphone to be able to ask themselves. So one of the questions actually references staff members who don't live in Madison County. They're wondering which county they should be tested in or report to.
You want me to try to field that one?
Yes, please.
That would be great.
Sure. It doesn't matter where you get tested. All the test results come, the test results will come to the county of residence. So if they live in Onondaga County, let's say, Onondaga County Health Department will get those test results. And if it's, for example, a positive case, Onondaga County will initiate the case investigation to identify the contacts. And when they find out that this individual may teach or at the school, they will then reach out to us to continue the investigation. And because the facility is located in Madison County, most likely we will start having more constant and direct interaction with the school at that point. But you can get tested anywhere. The results will make their way back to us.
Thank you, Eric. And I think I want to apologize because I was having some technical difficulties while you were presenting, Eric. You may have actually answered this question already, but I'm going to ask it anyways, just in case. Is Madison County planning to follow what's been proposed from Onondaga County in terms of setting up rapid testing sites for schools?
Sure, and I'm gonna answer that first of all to let you know that Onondaga County does not have that in place either at this time. We are working with the same Upstate Medical University's laboratory as they have indicated, and what has happened is our discussions with Upstate Medical, they will provide that service once they have the capacity. They don't have the capacity yet, but it's the same service that they'll provide Onondaga County. And how that will work is once that capacity is available, we will, and we had this conversation this morning with the superintendents of all the school districts. My office will help coordinate getting those mobile units to the school districts if need be. So yes, the short end of the answer is yes, we do intend to have that capacity. Right now, I will tell you, though, Upstate's capacity is not there yet. They are working to do that. So as soon as that's available, we will make that available to everyone else. But I wanted to make sure you're clear on that.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. And one more question I had come in. I can find it here. Mother is asking if there's going to be leniency for older students who might have to help their younger siblings when parents are not at home when they're working. So I'm guessing, although I can't clarify quite exactly what she's asking, I'm thinking leniency for the students as they're at home doing their remote schooling.
I think we probably need a little bit more clarification on what that situation is. I know we did specifically ask families, you know, do you prefer having your kids in the same cohort, same day schedule, or would you prefer them to be on opposite day schedules, depending on whatever the environment is at home, or just taking into account all the factors. And I do know that there was, while the overwhelming majority of people wanted their kids in school on the same day, some wanted it opposite. So there may be different things at play. But I would encourage people to contact the specific, you know, principal, because obviously there's a lot of factors depending on what grade level and the ages of students involved. I think we need a little more information to be able to probably answer that as specifically as they'd like.
Yes, I think now that it's come in, they have a 9th grader at home with twin 2nd graders. So I'm anticipating then that while the 9th graders at home following their 9-period day schedule remote learning, will there be some leniency while that 9th grade student is trying to assist their little brothers or sisters as they're trying to do their virtual learning as well. So I think that's probably just a question that you want to direct towards your building principal. And once the classes will start in the fall, certainly have that conversation with individual teachers as well. But Jay, do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I mean, there's got to be flexibility all around, right? I mean, there's got to be flexibility with teachers, with students, with parents. We have to be understanding of all situations. You know, obviously, we need to require that, you know, students are doing their schoolwork and being engaged. At the same time, we also need to be flexible about different circumstances. So, I mean, that's a hard question to answer. You know, I think the best answer is that we're going to do the best we can, and we're going to hope that the family and the students do the best they can, and we're going to try to figure it out as we go, because that's one of those scenarios that is going to be a challenge.
Thank you. We do have more questions, but I want to be considerate of everyone's time.
Yeah, I know we've gone a little ways past our scheduled ending time, but again, I would encourage people to continue to look at our frequently asked questions portion on our website, because we will take these questions. We'll continue to post the answers almost on a every day or two basis. And we also would invite anybody who wants to, right from the start of our session on Tuesday, we'll start off with more questions. So people, if you'd like to ask it directly to us, or you'd like us to read it, we'll continue in that process on Tuesday at 5. Also, we'd like to remind people that we will be releasing our next video as a follow-up to the cleaning protocols video we released last week. Next week, we'll be releasing the distancing video that will actually show you what it looks like in the classrooms, in the hallways, so that you can see it, not just hear us talk about it, but see what it would look like, of how we've taken measures to make sure we have a safe environment. So again, thank you for joining us tonight. Want to especially thank Eric Feist for again joining us tonight and providing us some expert answers to some of the questions that people have really been asking us a lot. So thank you, Eric, and we look forward to having you again on Tuesday. And everybody, thanks again. Stay safe. Have a good rest of the night, and we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. Thank you.